The picture you're viewing there is of the Kocina family. On the front row is my grandfather, John Kocina, and in the middle is their youngest son, George Kocina, and on the right is my grandmother, Mary Kocina. The back row on the left to right is Uncle Joe Kocina, who was the oldest. My dad, James Kocina. Next one is Raymond Kocina, and then John Kocina, and the last one on the back row on the right is Bill Kocina. That is the entire Kocina family that was raised on the old Kocina farm. My name is Neil Kocina, and the purpose of this DVD is to give the children of the Kocina family a better understanding of their roots and the hardships that were overcome by their forefathers. The video portion of this DVD was taken by my uncle George Kocina with an 8mm camera, which was state-of-the-art at that time. His film library is maintained by his oldest son, David Kocina, who resides in Minneapolis, Minnesota. David also engineered the conversion from 8mm film to the DVD format. Without his assistance, this DVD would not exist. Also, my grandson, also named David Kocina, who resides in Atlanta, Georgia, has engineered the audio portion. A little background. Nicholas Kocina and Anna Tukolsky Kocina, my great-grandparents, with their infant son, John, my grandfather, came from borderline Czechoslovakia, Germany, in about 1873. It took 17 weeks in a sailing vessel to reach America. I wonder what they used for diaper service. They located in Chicago, where Nicholas worked at Armour Fowler Packing Company. They lived on Archer Avenue and Homestead, which is now railroad tracks. They later settled on a farm south of Verdigris, Nebraska. This background information is borrowed from the book Verdigris, 1887 to 1987. John Kocina and his wife Mary homesteaded what we now think of as the old Kocina farm, which is located between Winnetoon and Verdigris, Nebraska. This brings us up to the video portion of this DVD. My grandfather broke the sod on this farm walking behind a team of oxen. Also, the buildings were erected while they lived there. Hard work from sunup to sunset was the name of the game. As we view this DVD, I will refer to the various characters as they relate to me. If you are 1 or 2 generations younger, you will have to adjust your thinking as to how it relates to you. This is a picture of my grandfather, John Kocina, picking a chicken. There was no buying them at supermarkets already dressed in those days. You caught them in the yard and you picked them and cleaned them and fried them. He could pick a chicken pretty fast, as a matter of fact. It's an art. My grandfather was one of the hardest working men I've ever known. Very kind-hearted person. This is my grandma Kocina feeding the chickens. Her dog stays nearby all the time. It seems like they're very much attached. The chickens seem to be well fed. You'll notice here how the dog still keeps in touch with his master. Into the barn. Okay, dog, let's go now. Come on, there he is. My grandmother always walked a little hitch. She had an arthritic hip. This is my grandfather. It must be Sunday. Everybody has their Sunday clothes on. My grandfather never walked hardly anywhere. He was always running or trotting. He was one of the hardest working men I've ever known. Here he comes running, and the dog right after him. If you wanted to drink water, you had to pump it from the well. There was no rainwater in the houses nor modern conveniences. If you wanted to drink, you pumped it. You also didn't waste water. This is my Uncle John and Aunt Mary. They lived in Omaha, Nebraska when this was taken, and I think this shot is in Omaha. I guess someone has read the riot act. This is my Uncle George and Aunt Mary, and I believe this is David Kocina, the oldest son of my Uncle George and Aunt Mary. They resided in Minneapolis. This is another one of my Aunt Mary's. I have quite a few. Mary's is very popular in the Kocina family, so I keep saying Aunt Mary is not necessarily the same person. This is my Uncle John and Aunt Mary getting ready to go for a ride in their car. I always kind of forgotten how large cars were in those days. They must have been real gas guzzlers. But gas was cheap in those days, so I guess it didn't matter. This is my grandfather again. This is out on the farm. This is my cousin Mirthline and my sister Flora Jean. My grandfather coming out of the kitchen door. Mirthline and Flora Jean were playing dress up. They had gotten into Grandma's closet and gotten some of her old dresses out. So they were doing a little show and tell. As I recall, Grandma got somewhat upset when this happened, as she did not really want them to get into her closet and get all of her clothes out. But some of the finery that women wore in those days was quite unique, complete with hat and all. This is my Uncle Joe, the eldest of the 6 boys that my grandparents raised. He had a great sense of humor. This is my grandfather surveying the situation. This is Flora Jean and Mirthline doing a little show and tell again. This is my Uncle Bill, I believe, and daughter. This is my cousin Margaret Mary, and this is her parents, Ann and Raymond Kocina. They lived in Omaha, Nebraska also. Everybody rode bicycles in those days. It's a way of getting around and get your picture taken. This is my Uncle Raymond. Had a great sense of humor. Was a consummate salesman. It's kind of strange that the 6 boys raised on the farm, none of them became farmers. They all went on to other professions. This is my Uncle Raymond, Aunt Ann, and my cousin Margaret Mary. They're getting ready to go for a Sunday drive, I guess. Again, these shots are all taken in Omaha, Nebraska. This is taken in Wilmington, Nebraska, where I lived. Everybody's getting their picture taken riding a bicycle. This is my Aunt Mary, my Uncle Joe's wife. This is my mother, Rena Kocina. Has a great smile. She was a pretty lady. Another smile for the camera. There we go. This is my dad. He had to ride the bicycle too. He's going to show you 10 easy lessons how to bust your butt. I knew he would do it. But he's still smiling, and he's back up, ready to ride again. This is my sister Flora Jean, and my grandfather behind her. This is little Neil, surveying the situation. As I recall, they had the Sunday dinner at my grandparents', but I had the chicken pox, so I wasn't able to go, so they came to town and took my picture later. Bib overalls with his dress that all the farm boys wore in those days. This is my cousin Kevin Kocina and his wife Mary, another Kocina that married Mary. This is my dad. This is taken out on the homestead. Take it back. This picture here is shot at my Uncle Joe's farm, which was near Creighton, Nebraska. My grandfather coming out, I think they just had Sunday dinner. Yep, full tummy. This is my Uncle Joe. Great sense of humor. You're going to see a big laugh in just a minute. Wish we had talkies in those days. There he is. Somebody shot a squirrel, so we know what we're going to have for supper tonight. Small dog belonged to my Uncle John and Aunt Mary that lived in Omaha. They always brought the dog with them. The dog's name was Susie. This is my grandparents. My grandfather on the left, my grandmother, and my Uncle Joe on the right. I don't know what he said, but I think there's a few cuss words mixed in there. I never seen him smoke cigarettes, but he always chomped on a cigar, particularly after a Sunday dinner. This is a train. I think this is taken in Winnington, Nebraska, where the train came through. It went north in the morning and south in the afternoon. Ran daily. This is my Uncle John doing a little target practice off in a bridge. I'm not sure the exact location there, but it'll be in Nebraska somewhere. This is my Aunt Helen and their daughter Marlene. My Uncle Bill was a consummate storyteller, some of them with some slight exaggerations. My Uncle John and Aunt Mary, and their dog Susie. Aunt Mary, I think, lived to be over 100 years old, 103 or thereabouts. She just passed away here a few years ago. It's my Uncle John. This is the old homestead house. My grandfather getting his picture taken. This is my dad. My Uncle Bill. And this is little Neil with his baseball. How do you like those moves? This is my grandfather. This is my dad on the left. You just barely see him. The old-fashioned two-holer. No indoor conveniences. This is Aunt Mary, that was my Uncle George Kocina's wife. This is my cousin Kevin Kocina. And my grandmother. If you want to drink water, you had to pump it out of the well. Nothing came easy. This is a parade of the family here. This is my grandmother and grandfather, John and Mary Kocina. This is my Uncle Joe, the oldest of the boys, my Uncle Raymond, my dad, my Uncle John, my Uncle Bill, my Uncle George. And this is their wives, Mary Kocina, Joe's wife, Ann Kocina, Raymond's wife, my mother, Mary Kocina, Ellen Kocina, Mary Kocina. This is the cousins, my cousin Kevin Curry, and I think one of George's children. Mirthaline and Flora Jean, and I was the one bringing up the end. This is my grandfather working on his garden. Everything was done by hand. The sod was originally broke by a team of oxen that he walked behind, and he had horses in later years. I don't recall I've ever seen a tractor on the farm, although I'm sure in later years they used tractors. But at the time these pictures were taken, everything was done the hard way, and a lot of manual labor and a lot of endurance to keep things going. My grandmother was kind of the brains of the farm. She controlled the checkbook and did a lot of the planning. My grandfather was the hardest working man I've ever known. Never stood still. He was always doing something. I like the way in those days felt hats were pretty common. Everybody wore one. Hardly ever see them anymore. This is a picture of the farm buildings. There's the horse barn. You'll see a white building right here coming up. That white building was a garage that he built for a car that he bought. When they first moved there, they just had horse and buggy transportation, but when they bought a Model T Ford, he went to town to pick it up. When he came in, supposedly he drove into this new garage and ran into the end of it, saying, "Whoa." But the car didn't act a whole like the horses did. This is a picture of the main farmhouse, which was considered a pretty nice house in those days. No modern conveniences, but it was well built and well designed and very roomy and very nice house. And the flowers and things around the flower beds, it kind of amazes me that they were done so well. There was no nurseries down the streets that you could buy plants at. You had to raise them from seed. This is a good shot of the farm buildings on the farm, taken from out in the pasture looking at the farm. This is my grandfather getting new potatoes from the under the ground. They take from the ground without destroying the vines and leaving the rest of the potatoes to mature, which they would harvest in the fall, because those potatoes had to last all winter long. The first pheasant I ever shot was in that area that's on the film now. I remember I shot it in the air and a pheasant landed and I grabbed it by the neck and ran all the way to the house. I was so excited having bagged it. It was a fairly large farm. Grandfather farmed every inch of it. A lot of hard work and a lot of long steps. You can see the farm buildings off in the distance. There's a lot of pasture ground as well as tillable farmland. This is Father Falke, who was the pastor of the church in Creighton, Nebraska. And as a wedding, my cousin Mirthaline and her husband got married here. Everybody dressed in their finest. That's my Uncle Joe, the father of the bride. The lighting inside the church is not too well, as they didn't have strong lighting in those days, so there's not many pictures inside. Most of them are taken outside. This is my Uncle Joe and Aunt Mary, the parents of the bride. And this is the bride and her new husband receiving congratulations. This is one of my Aunt Marys. This is my Uncle Bill, my Uncle John. Here's my grandfather, my grandmother. This is my dad. This is Larry, my sister Flora Jean's husband. Henry Knowles. This is some people knows everybody wearing the felt hat again. That's Mary Kocina, Kevin's Mary. This is my dad's Aunt Elizabeth. This is me. How do you like that do? That's my dad. This is my grandmother and grandfather walking. They dressed in their Sunday finest and walking pretty well. She always had a arthritic hip and had difficulty walking. Always had pain in her legs, but she always maintained activity and was busy to the very end. My Uncle Bill.